Welcome to Tuscan Talks, Senior Living Today. Senior living communities have come a long way from the days they were referred to as old folks' homes. Senior living has become hospitality on steroids, and seniors are living it up, leading enriching and fulfilling lives. Join me in a rewarding conversation with experts, professionals, practitioners, and seniors, explaining what senior living is all about. All right, welcome, Josh. My goodness, I am so delighted. I can't tell you how excited we all were to find out that you got to be on our video audio podcast for Tuscan Talks, Senior Living Today. So I'm delighted to see you. And, Kieran and Paula were all excited. They were telling me that, hey, we got Josh on our show because you had given us tremendous amount of information before. So as you know, the podcast is really designed to address senior living issues, not only for those prospective residents of a senior living community, but also for their loved ones, also for the adult children who care about how they're being taken care of and the type of experience which they have in that type of community. This particular show is right up your alley. It's all about memory care, and it's particularly about giving our adult children the opportunity to better understand what memory care actually means, and particularly for those seniors who are still in homes, their own homes, and are being taken care of by the adult children. So we're going to talk about all of that, but before we start, I think it would be worthwhile for our viewers and our listeners to just know more about your background. So if you could just give us, you can start in the third grade if you want, or you could just give us cliff notes, whichever one you want to do.
My background originally started at Berkeley. I graduated with music ed and music therapy as a degree, really jumping in and seeing the power of music and memory care, people starting to speak again or being able to walk. From there, I became a researcher where I get to really ingrain myself into the environment of people with dementia, seeing that it's overlooked, but there's so much opportunity. So I got to conduct research, but also started studying healthcare economics, this huge bubble that is going to be coming soon of people with Alzheimer's disease in particular. So from there, I actually transferred to Lesley University, got my master's in non-pharmacological healthcare. Really, how does that come into our communities? Different smells, aromas, different visual cues to help people be more successful. Then started my doctorate work in osteopathic neuroscience, and then just completed my all my coursework as a clinical gerontologist and aging neuroscientist. But still writing my dissertation, taking some time. And currently, I'll actually live in some of our communities where I work, and actually be side by side with residents and kind of see how the environment affects certain behaviors. So kind of a whole embodiment, I get to experience it, but I'm also a practitioner in the field. At the same time, I get to conduct research and bring it back to the field through the popular sector of research. So I have the best job in the world. Actually.
Yeah, well, I have the best guest in the world. I got to tell you, with all of that type of background, just tremendously beneficial, and I know it's going to be very, very valuable to our listeners and to our viewers. Well, let me just simply start with something just very foundational, if you will. I mean, we hear the terms memory care, we hear dementia, mild dementia, we hear Alzheimer's, so many different terms. Why don't you simply give us a lay of the land? What are all of those terms? What do they mean? And what kind of spectrum do they imply?
Yeah, so a lot of people get confused. What is Alzheimer's, dementia, mild cognitive impairment? So really what it is dementia is an umbrella term. So this is a group of symptoms. It's actually not a diagnosis. Like a lot of people think that dementia is a disease. So it is a diagnosis, but not a disease itself. So underneath you have all these causes. In fact, there's over 100 different causes. So you have Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal, Lewy bodies, Parkinson's. All of those create dementia symptoms. So when I explain it to families, I say that you have a group of symptoms, which makes up dementia. Then you have the different causes. You have Alzheimer's, you have Lewy body, and each of those is going to have a different journey, different behaviors, and a different decline. So it's really important for people to understand what type of dementia they think their loved one has to better care for them and better plan for what comes next. But truly, dementia is just a group of symptoms. I'll be honest, what I see is 80% of the time, and that's probably rough, maybe a little less, is people have dementia unspecified. For me, when I'm helping doing somebody's care, it's really challenging because if we don't know what type of dementia it is, we can't accommodate them the way we should. So I always push families, ask what type of dementia they think that they might have with your PCP. That makes a huge difference for us to care for their loved one.
So as far as the adult children, very typically the typical scenario is that they are either taking care of their parents in their homes, or they're going to visit their parents who live in one or more parent lives in their own home. So what are they looking for in terms of what eventually becomes some type of onset of dementia, or at least symptomatic dementia?
Yeah, so just keep in mind people will always have memory challenges. So as people age after the age of 65, we all have cognitive decline. So you will see slight forgetfulness. You will see that they might have forgot an exit to get off the highway. They might forget where they put their favorite dish. That's pretty typical. It's when you start to see things like the remote in the trash or the keys in the microwave, or you'll see that they're making poor decisions. And that really raises the flag quite a bit. I always say, keep in mind, there's a term called mild cognitive impairment. That is not dementia, it's a precursor. If your loved one can do something called IADLs, instrumental activities of daily living, like balancing a checkbook, answering a phone, if they're still able to do those things, but having memory challenges, probably mild cognitive impairment. When you really want to start looking is when ADL starts slipping, forgetting to brush their teeth, not remembering where people are, increase in falls, or actually wandering is a huge thing that's happening everywhere right now, as people don't recognize this is their home because they remember 1930, not right now, and they start to go outside and wander, which can be very dangerous.
So Josh, aside from the wandering, when does it cross over to a point where the adult children need to start actually worrying and potentially seeking some assistance or advice?
Yeah, so I'll be honest. When there's a spouse in the house, the spouse is really good at covering for their loved one. So I see this very often, that you have a wife with dementia and the husband starts doing everything for the wife and kind of hides those symptoms. But really, you want to start to look for safety. Once somebody wanders away, they leave an oven on more than once, or put things at risk. I've seen a lot of people where they will start hoarding, for example. So they'll start taking all the knives and putting them where they shouldn't be in the bathroom closet, or they will they will do silly things like have a broken window but not have it fixed, or will disconnect the phone and put the phone somewhere and not know where they put the phone. Those things can really challenge somebody, because if there is an event, they can't call somebody. They might not be able to have the cognitive ability to help. Also, I've seen this a few times, that you have a spouse that's very healthy, non-dementia, but they have health issues like maybe a heart attack or something, and they fall, and the person with dementia doesn't know to call anybody. So then it becomes this huge predicament, is the safety for the other spouse too as well. So safety is a huge thing, and wandering I see all the time.
And so, and certainly in terms of wandering, that's an obvious one. In terms of potentially safety related issues inside the house, whether it's the adult child or their own home, the circumstance by which an adult sees that one parent is obviously, as you say, covering for the other, and continuing to do things. So what's mandated at that point? What's the call to action? What does the adult child, what would be best for the adult child to do?
Yeah, so it depends on state, to be honest. And I've done consulting in most of the states, so each one's different. Here in Florida, a lot of people can just diagnose with dementia. It's not like a specialist all the time. I always say you should really go see a specialist, a geriatrician, somebody that focuses. We see a pediatrician for kids. Why not see a geriatrician for a senior?
Yeah.
Is really they should be going and getting cognitively screened. Maybe do like a MOCA or mini mental. Those are really, really important tests. And then working with a doctor too as well. A diagnosis and an accurate diagnosis can be the change of someone risking safety and having good care interventions in the home. For example, if you have dementia with Lewy body and you get that diagnosis, you know the color black is scary from the kneecap down. So Making sure you don't have black mats in the house or throw rugs is going to decrease their chances of falling and maybe hitting their head. So there are a lot of interventions if you know the right type of dementia. So it's really important for people to find out what type of dementia they think they are and find the right doctor. I would say two minds are more powerful than one. You should always get a second opinion.
So, you already, of course, it just flows off of your lips here, Josh. So you've already indicated something that I think many of us aren't even aware of. And the fact is that you can go to a geriatrician and can actually be tested. And they can identify not only that you have some type of potential cognitive impairment, but the general nature of that cognitive impairment. So let's just do that one again. So the tests are called what?
So this is something I really like. It's called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Tool, known as a MoCA. It's a 10 to 15-minute memory screening. A lot of people use the MMSE, which is the mini mental status exam. That works okay, but the MoCA is really great because each part of that taps into a different part of the brain. So when I do that, I can see maybe it's frontal temporal because the frontal lobe is getting affected in the first section, or it's memory and attention, the limbic system in the brain. And a doctor, after seeing that, can really identify what parts of the brain might be damaged, and then they can get an accurate diagnosis. Just in about 10 minutes, it's not guaranteed, but it's a good tool to kind of screen and get some guidance from that point on. Honestly, you don't have to be a doctor to do that. You could literally go to Google, a family member could print it, there's instructions on how to do it, and they could actually administer their own their own MoCA assessment and get a good baseline as well.
When you're looking for the doctor, I mean, is there a specialty called geriatrics?
Yeah, so there are geriatricians, like a pediatrician, but geriatrician, and those are people that specialize. I always say you want to ask the doctor, do they diagnose and what history do they have working with dementia? You'd be surprised how many doctors just follow something called the DSM-5, which is a book of diagnostic work. They literally look for symptoms and just diagnose. But you want to look at biological influences. You also want to look at behavioral things as well. For example, there's many reversible or curable types of dementia people don't realize. So like a UTI can actually make someone seem like they have dementia, or clinical depression. Sometimes when you treat those, the dementia symptoms go completely away. So there might be some hope too as well.
What is the difference between a geriatrician and a gerontologist?
So a gerontologist is someone that studies the aging process. It's more PhD stuff. So for me, I study how does the brain evolve? How does it mimic childhood, the behaviors that happen? So mine's more behavioral based. An MD would be a geriatrician. This is somebody that prescribes medicine, gives referrals to certain services, and that they're usually the one that typically does a diagnosis, or you can use a neuropsychologist too as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Talk to me about what I've heard the term. Was it Lewy body?
Lewy body.
Lewy body. Tell us what it is.
Yeah. So you see things very different. Alzheimer's disease is the most common. You get 70% of people with dementia have Alzheimer's disease. That's like forgetfulness, not remembering what we had for breakfast, short-term memory deficits. Lewy body is the third most common type of dementia. You'll see hallucinations is the big thing. So something as simple as this: if your loved one has dementia with Lewy body, don't let them watch the news, because if they see a shooting or a child that's hurt, they can actually internalize that and think it's their child, that somebody's breaking into their house. So just restricting negative news, you'll see a lot less behaviors, and you'll see people flourish more. You also see like Parkinsonian shakes or tremors that come with Lewy body. And there's different physical changes too as well. But knowing somebody has Lewy bodies versus Alzheimer's, the care is completely different. And the challenge I see in memory cares is people just train all about Alzheimer's disease, so that all the other types of dementia often get overlooked. It's really important for people to know what type of dementia it is. And I know even your staff, Larry, and your communities have gone where they've actually learned the different types of dementia and how to work with them. And that is so powerful. People need to have that type of knowledge in order to better care for seniors with dementia.
Before we talk about that, and glad you mentioned that, but in terms of just simply what the adult children can do in their homes, whether it's the parent's home or their own home, the types of interventions that would be helpful
Yeah.
for their parents. What are those kinds of things that that the adult children could certainly benefit from in their own homes?
So there's a lot people can do. I'll give some simple suggestions. I would say try to put yourself in the shoes of the person with dementia in the five senses. So, for example, one of them is a contrast toilet seat. A lot of people don't realize people will break a hip with dementia, very high risk of sitting and missing the toilet, breaking a hip, going out to rehab, and then never really being the same. So I
Mm.
say just get a lime green color $12 toilet seat from Amazon. That contrast will actually reduce the risk of fall up to 40%. So now you just eliminated a huge health issue. In addition, is you want the seat, I know it's really minute, is you don't want a seat that will slam shut. I've seen people go to shut the toilet, they get freaked out and they fall. So making sure it's a slow seat that goes down. Also, the color red fosters melatonin production, keeps people sleepy. People with dementia often have sleep issues. So by putting red night lights versus regular colored night lights, you reduce the chances of people being fully woken up, not getting a full night's sleep. But even something as small as removing the black mats or the scatter rugs in the home have a huge impact. I'll probably give you the best tool I've seen families use, and I always get emails. Sundowning is a huge issue. So this is in the evening, you'll see an increase in behaviors, confusion. One way to manage that, super easy, a caregiver puts pajamas on 2 hours before the sun goes down. That visual trigger to their loved one is it's nighttime and they start to produce melatonin, and you'll actually see less sundowning symptoms. Now they're more manageable, they're not trying to get outside, and they're actually starting to get sleepy, so they have a better night's sleep. So
So,
small things
Josh,
like that.
you had clicked out for just a minute. Do that one again. I'm not.
Okay.
I got sundowning, but I didn't get the specific tip.
Yeah, sure thing. So when managing sundowning, one of the best tools that families can do or spouses is to put pajamas on themselves. And by creating that visual trigger 2 hours before the sun goes down,
I see.
is it actually the person with dementia will see that, release melatonin, and actually get sleepy and have a better night's sleep.
I
So by
got it.
doing that, you can very easily foster that type of behavior.
Very, very cool. Great stuff. Anything else that you can think of that the adult children could use?
Yeah, I would always say work with your first responders. One thing that I see, just because I see a lot of wandering, is just get a piece of paper, put a picture of your loved one, their nickname, where they would like to go, where they might go, a hobby that you have on hand. So if they do wander away, and also just have that on hand for first responders if anything comes up. And then also working with assisted livings are a huge resource. So make sure they're reaching out to people for ongoing education and training. There's so much information out there that people can very easily tap into, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. So it's just being more aware of it.
Speaking of which, then let's transition over to that. There obviously, I know in your experience, you're in senior living, as am I, and there comes a time in which the adult child, as much as they hate to admit it, realize that their parent is just simply not safe any longer, either for themselves or potentially for the spouse. At that point in time, they have to make some type of decision about, heading towards congregate care. Talk besides wandering. Are there any other times in which you really start to see that it's a crucial period of time?
Yeah, so we see this right now. We're starting to see the outcomes from social isolation, especially with COVID. So what we're seeing is people that if they are socially restricted, decline faster, lose abilities faster, and those could be physical or mental abilities. So what we've noticed is so many people stayed home so long that by the time they get to us, they have such a deficit. It's really hard. And I'm also seeing a lot of people not moving into assisted living at the right time. People are holding off so long that they don't get the full benefit. I always tell families that yes, sometimes it might feel prematurely, but it's not, because when they move in, they create a cohort, whether it's assisted living without memory care or memory care, is they build that friendship that they all decline cognitively together as a cohort, and they have each other to support. We see this all the time, that you have a group of 4 or 5 residents, they sit at lunch every day and they go through the whole disease process together. It's not alone. Versus somebody that stays home, has limited socialization. Yes, they might have people coming, but it might only be one person. The brain, we are hardwired for social beings. So we want different diversities of conversations. And you can really only get that with people at the same cognitive ability and where people can actually flourish. I'll give an example. I'm in a community today and I'm seeing 3 residents with something called aphasia. It's a speech challenge or word salad, sometimes people say. So you get the da ba ba ba. And literally those 3 residents are having a cup of coffee. You don't understand one word of what they're saying, but at the same time, they're all engaged and they feel like they understand each other. And this is a term called retrogenesis. You go back to children that can't speak and they socially engage through somatic communication. That returns, and that's so beneficial for someone's quality of life. I've done so many at-home assessments recently where I'm just so surprised people are waiting so long when they could really reap the benefits of social engagement.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic because we think in terms of wandering, we think in terms of safety, but we don't tend to think in terms of social isolation and what benefit can be achieved by just simply allowing what you call the cohort to be able to socialize together. I tell the story, and I know because we've known each other for so long, Josh. But in my mother's case, there came a point. The reason that I even wanted to do something like Tuscan Gardens is because one by one, her friends for decades were passing away, or were just simply unable to be able to leave their homes any longer. So it got to a point where we were the only ones, our family were the only ones who would be able to see mom on Saturdays and Sundays, which is why I started looking around for some place that could give her that type of social contact. And I would imagine, as we talk about memory care, that it becomes even more significant in the memory care context.
Yeah, I see. So I get a lot of people that say, oh, well, they're not ready for memory care. But honestly, if they're having a memory deficit and the struggles, what I see a lot of times, people wait too long. So they'll become ostracized by other seniors because they can't keep up. Or really, it's important for people feel like it's prematurely, but I don't. I see cohorts of people that move in together and they decline together as a group and they are really successful. And we actually do research in the communities. What we do is we do a MOCA assessment every 3 months. And oftentimes people will move in and get a very low MOCA score. And within 6 months, their MOCA score is much higher just from socializing. So it shows the power of socialization. And we're also stuck in this Western world medicate. A lot of the medications, I'll give one example, for Alzheimer's disease, can't legally talk about the specific one. It actually doesn't treat the disease itself, it only masks the symptoms. And a lot of research shows socialization is more powerful than the medications out there on the market. So I think that going to more non-pharmacological interventions like socialization, music, art can really profoundly change the quality of life for somebody with dementia.
So why don't you give us some hints and tips, if you will, about that transition into a senior living community? What should our viewers, our listeners, how should they manage that process?
Yeah, so I have to say it should be very well thought out. There's a lot of tools that people can use that get overlooked. For example, you want to personalize the room in assisted living. We have this magical tool. It's not a medical bed. Sometimes they do come in with medical bed, but typically it's their furniture, something they can identify with. I have to say, if you do a great job of creating a good room, people transition much faster. And I'll give you an example. We've noticed that people that sleep in the same bed from home to here transition much faster than a brand new bed. It's like you and I putting a brand new pair of shoes on. It takes some time to get used to it. If that's not an option where you have to buy a new bed, just get a topper 2-inch memory foam, put it on the bed at home 2 weeks before moving in. Let that body somatically recognize it. When they move to the community, when they lay down, their body subconsciously triggers that and they transition faster to the community. But something as small as taking a picture of their house, putting it in a frame on their door, whenever they ask to go home, you actually can walk them. And I see this, people in early to mid stages, you walk them to that and say, is this your home? And they say, yes. And they start to identify, this is my home, this room, so that they're not thinking of the home to get out. So simple, small things like that can have a profound impact. And I also have to say that be cautious. I know people want to use photos, but sometimes photos can trigger behaviors. where they have a photo of their family. As soon as they walk in, they see that and they're like, oh yeah, my family, I need to go home. So be mindful of the photos. I'd actually try to do that at home. See what photos trigger a response and which ones don't. That can be really profoundly impactful.
And as far as just simply what the adult children should be looking for in selecting a community, any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, actually. It really, there's a feel for every community you walk into. And I have to say, the feel should really feel accommodating when you walk in. You know if a community is well put together. I always say that you want to look at staffing ratios, ask about turnover. Right now, turnover is crazy in the industry. So families don't just think, oh, they've had a lot of turnover. Really think about, hey, who's your longest employee, and can I meet them? Usually that person is somebody that's going to give you a good flavor of that community. But in addition, is when you're looking for memory care, you want to make sure people are well trained, that they have all the departments have some type of training too as well. Like I know you guys have invested in a tremendous amount of training, so do we, is you want to make sure people are well trained for dementia and not just meeting state regulations. So the first question I always tell families to ask is, how is your staff trained? How are they going to know my mom? What type of system do you use to orient them to the community? Is it a life bio? Is it, how do you collect all that data? We focus so much on the care plan. I think we need to look at the social collection of information and how will that be integrated. But I have to say, it's a lot about the feel of when you walk into a community is how is that team? There's such a personality dynamic. You need to mold with that team and be a part of that team. And I would say families are just as much as part of that as well. I say the care plan, yes, we might be the quote unquote professionals, but the family is the expert in their loved one. So we need to lean on them. And you want to make sure that you have a voice too as you go through that process.
Fantastic. Just fantastic, Josh. Needless to say, we've known each other for a number of years. We could be talking for a long time. And you're constant in terms of a font of information for us. Anything that, for purposes of our viewers and listeners, anything I've missed in terms of just, walking you along the line of explanations and so forth? Anything that you might want to kind of finish up with?
Yeah, I leave anyone listening just to know that it's an ongoing and evolving process. Don't just think, oh, this is the one thing I read it and this is how it's going to go. With memory care, be super open-minded that you have a plan, but that plan might never fully work. It's going to be different day to day, and education will be your friend. There's so much tools, education, free resources. Lean on the community that you choose and ask a lot of questions. And I say, just put as many tools in your toolbox as you possibly can. It will make life better for you and your loved one. So,
fantastic, Josh. All right, I think we'll finish it with that. And again, thank you so much for wanting to be on our show, agreeing to be on our show, and delighted. And I know certainly the adult children, the viewers, the listeners can take a whole lot out of what you've just talked about. So thanks so much for being here, and we'll see each other soon.
Thank you, Larry.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Tuscan Talks, Senior Living Today. For more information about us, our guests, our communities, and for a full library of our episodes and resource materials, visit TuscanTalks.com. See you next time.